I'm not here to defend Tony LaRussa because I think even though I actually like swinging 3-0 up 15-4, it's just basic sportsmanship. The same way, like, you're up 30 in a basketball game, you don't start hoisting threes. Like, I don't think that's that crazy of an unwritten rule, but you can disagree if you want. Dude starts throwing 45 miles an hour, all bets are off. Like, you do whatever the hell you want when the guy's throwing half as fast. He's a position player. That said,
they were buddies too from like the Dominican or whatever. Like,
yeah,
they had known.
Did you see this year when Rizzo faced Freddie
other.
Freeman?
Yeah, and laughing.
Yeah, it's like they just, come on, Tony, ease up. That said, I think there are fewer and fewer people like Tony LaRussa in sports. We're going to miss them when they're gone. Dying breed. My favorite part of that story was Lance Lynn on his team saying, basically, like Tony doesn't know. I'm with Mercedes, the player. I'm not with Tony. And Tony said, Lance has a locker. I have an office. At some point, leadership is you're supposed to represent. I don't forget that part. Lance has a locker. I have an office. Now, he's wrong about being able to swing 3-0, 45 miles an hour, but coaches, managers, they're not taking on their own guys in the media anymore. And a little personality, not everybody has to agree. Like, that's good for sports. And the future managers of this game are not saying things like, he's got a locker, I've got an office, like, I'm the boss.
Well, I mean, I think one of the greatest sound bites in the history of sporting sound bites is Tommy Lasorda on Bavacqua. Now, granted, he was on another team, but I think the key was the sports we grew up on. You know, even Lasorda was older. Hell, Tony LaRussa was older, like when we were like 12, you know. But Phil Jackson used to go out of his way. One, he'd crush his own guys. I mean, he wrote a book who crushed Kobe, and then he went back to coach him. But he would always talk shit about other coaches. These coaches, Bill Parcells was famous for crushing his own players. Like Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, like they crushed Jared Goff through Michael Silver. They never really said anything. Even to this day, Sean is not going to say anything bad. They're part of what makes sports great are the characters.
Absolutely.
And listen, I don't want to sound like an old get off my lawn. I'm 36 years old. But like one thing the NBA, I've been saying this for a while, has lost is just some crazy motherfuckers. Like the NBA I grew up on, at any moment, something crazy could happen. And you knew it. The NFL is still always like that because the game is still physical. Like they've taken the physicality. Part of where it happened in the NBA was like a hard foul and it was melee, right? Well, the hard fouls don't exist anymore, right? A hard foul even now.
I don't know. LeBron almost went to the hospital on Wednesday night.
But to me, coaches, like in baseball, you said this before we started the podcast. Not in a million years would Dave Roberts. I mean, I don't think Gabe Kapler would be allowed to say this. Alex Cora, the Red Sox.
Aaron Boone.
They would never, ever. I mean, what he calls his guys.
Which,
savages.
by the way, if I was I wouldn't want my manager. Like, I'm not saying it's good necessarily, but it's entertaining. It's good for the sport.
And they're in the entertainment business. Like we're in the entertainment business, right? If you do something, whether a television show, which that's what sports are, whether you do what we do, we talk now. Like ultimately your goal is to entertain. And I do think it's become much more generic, right? It's like I know for a fact coaches in all three major sports have to hate certain things and they just have to muzzle themselves. Yeah. We're back in the day. And listen, I'm not saying every coach, just a first-year coach back in '83 had the juice to say it. But, like, if Brad Stevens wanted to go, I think we've been pretty gutless this year. You know, I think beside, like, Marcus Smart, I think Tatum's been pretty selfish. That's getting said in the 87. That's not getting said now. But that creates, like, damn, do you see what – that gets people talking. That gets people enjoying. LaRussa, that got more people talking, I'd say, about baseball than anything that's happened. Anything that negatively has happened in baseball this year.
They're a great example because they're a legitimately good baseball team. And
they're the best team in baseball.
Last year, I watched a lot of White Sox games. And I loved last year. It was clear to me, like, this team's pretty sweet.
Well, you went to the playoff game against the A's, and remember that weren't they up 2-0?
They looked good in the postseason too. But they've just got sweet players, Abreu, and some of their pitchers, and all these dudes that have kind of have bellies and hit bombs. And to me, it'd be one thing if LaRussa was coaching the Angels. If he was the skipper of the Angels. The Angels stink. He's it's the best combination of the White Sox are a great story for baseball reasons. And now they're a story because the manager, one of the best teams in baseball, is like going to war with his own clubhouse. It's fantastic. So,
the guy, he's one of the greatest managers in the history of the sport, right?
Right.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
he be considered that? I mean,
Yeah,
wouldn't
he's
people
not a
argue he's
guy
probably
that
a
you can
top
just
five?
kick. You can just kick to the curb and promote your pitching coach.
I think where the
Plus, he's
NFL
pretty
still,
tight with the owner, so it's.
I think the NFL has lost. Like they used to be full of just Parcells, right? And they don't have as many of those anymore. But the one thing in football that you can still become really famous on as a coach is be like this schematic genius, and we're fascinated by that. Always have. Even going back to like before we were born, you can read about some of these coaches like Al Davis's X's and O's brain in the 70s. Like people just fascinated by outthinking people. Where in baseball, it's like, well, I know the managers ain't doing anything. Like, I don't think Gabe Kapler's getting that much credit. We're like, yeah, you don't even set the lineups or do anything. Like, I don't give him any credit. I give all the credit to the GM. Whether that's fair or not, I lean it's probably pretty fair because we all know the GMs run it. LaRussa, and this is why everyone pushed back when he was hired, which I thought was kind of stupid. It's like, okay, I get he's old, but let's not act like he's the village idiot. Like, he hasn't forgotten more baseball than probably 90% of the managers right now in the game know. Right, he's an elite
Yeah, I think the
baseball
question
mind.
is right there is an advantage to be gained by analytics. Is he open to using that advantage? Right, I think that's kind
Clearly
of
working whatever they're doing.
yeah. They got
right?
great players. I don't know really what managers' moments. We'll see.
Yeah,
Like,
Phil Jackson.
To me,
Phil
what
Jackson had
matters.
good players, though.
Yeah,
it's like you have great players.
Well, I don't. I've always said this. You can't find a championship team that won without great players. Like no coach has ever won without great players. But the moments that a baseball manager gets, he gets a couple over the course of a year. Bochy, you get a couple. It would what would you do with Madison Bumgarner in the World Series? Like how did you you'll get like LaRussa, this team's good enough that he's just going to get a couple of big moments. How does he handle it?
I just think it's very healthy still to this day in sports to be like, yeah, that's not going to fly here. And you just, that happens. Think about this. That happens in every one of our walk of lives, right? Whether we're for 18 years when we're a kid in our parents' roof, we're told all the time, no. When you get hired and you get a job, you're told all the time by your bosses, whether it's no, or you can't do that, or you can't stay here, or that's not good enough, or you got to do that. Human beings, everyone listening is told their wives say no. Like we're told no, we're humbled. Yet I think sometimes, and this is where the basketball has really become, it's like, God, these guys, Kyrie can just do whatever. Like that's not relatable. Where it's just say what you want, even if he's wrong, and I think it's stupid. I've been texting a lot of people. It's like, God, Tony, just chill out a little bit.
Yeah,
it is enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Like,
that's the problem. The one area you might kind of lose the locker room is this is a ridiculous take. Like this is the hill you're going to die on. You can't.
Well, it's like let it
3-0.
go, Tony.
Again, the guy was throwing 45 miles an hour. 47 miles an hour. By the way, the guy who hit the ball, Mercedes. He's like a 27-year-old second-year player. Like this guy, he's making $500,000. Like he's every home run. Like he's out here fighting for his career, right? That's the other part.
Like 40. I guess they only play 60 games, but he's like a 40 home run.
He was good last
guy.
year too, but I just mean like he's been basically in a bunch of minor league systems since they got him in the Rule 5 draft.
Guy, he hit some home runs I see just on highlights that feel like they're traveling farther. Like when he's facing legit pitchers, like he hits bombs.
It's not Tony's not just a manager of a good team. You just made me think of this. He's also a manager of one of the most fun teams in the game, and here he is like anti-fun.
Didn't you know someone with the White Sox or someone that said like the moment they did it, people were already out? Like people inside the building.
Somebody did tell me that internally they thought AJ Hinch was going to be the guy, and that's who a lot of people wanted. But Phil Jackson, Jerry Reinsdorf is tight with Tony. They hired Tony.
Well, I'll never forget this.
And Jerry Reinsdorf is like speaking of good management. Like he's good management historically.
Maybe we've talked about this publicly. Maybe we haven't, but it's so far removed. It doesn't matter anymore. When we had the radio show, we got to go to spring training, and we used to go and get to interview, the A's and the Giants. Well, with the A's, because we had them, they would just funnel us people. With the Giants, we kind of had to hustle for them. We were outsiders, but we got to do Bochy, maybe both years, but definitely one year. And we waited. And Bochy always did a good job of placating. He was great with the media. So he always put on this face, and I think most people are like, God, he's a great guy. And he is. A guy that worked for my cousin's business, was like his best friend in the minor leagues, loves him. Like Bochy's salt of the earth. I do think Bochy is a complete old school hard ass. I don't think he's the easiest guy to deal with on a daily basis. And Tim Flannery, the third base coach, legendary third base coach, is just retired. And what was the guy's name?
Roberto Kelly.
and we were going to interview Bruce Bochy, and he was in a closed door meeting, but the door was kind of cracked open. And I remember you and I were standing there, and it was very, very tense. And like he was kind of reading him the riot act of what was acceptable, what we were going to do, and how to do it.
In spring training, the pressure was on in spring training.
Guy, wasn't that like the third day of spring training too?
It was pretty early,
we weren't like a month in. Roberto Kelly walked out of that room like I'm sure offensive coordinators have walked out of the room with Bill Parcells. Like, am I going to get fired this year? Like, am I going to make it?
And the answer was
he was terrible.
It was bad.
And maybe Bochy knew, but I remember being scared for Roberto Kelly. Like, God damn, I was intimidated. Like, are we sure you're ready for this guy? And he flips a switch and he was great. But it's just like hard asses consistently in life, let alone sports, win. I do think they do a better job of just shutting their mouth now. I don't think they don't think like that. Like Kyle Shanahan just traded DeForest Buckner. Like they will do cutthroat things. They'll just. I think Andy's a great example of this. Like his actions, if you just look at his 20 years of cutting guys, trading guys, like pretty cutthroat.
Were you there? Yeah.
But he's very like, oh, big lovable, big Red. That's his nickname, Big Red. Yeah, Big Red will cut your ass.
They don't call you Big Red if you're just a jerk to everybody. They don't love you.
No.